So my life before getting sick was very active. I enjoyed things like playing the piano, golf, and running. I ran 6 miles a day and I had no health problems. But all of these things were taken from me when I developed disease and disability in my 20s. Just before having my second child, my life seemed pretty normal. I was of a normal weight starting out my second pregnancy. I managed to stay slim most of my life because of the amount of exercise that I did, but I have struggled with binge eating and weight gain, including during my daughter's pregnancy, which I took as a license to eat fast food for two. I gained 90 pounds. Shortly after my daughter was born, my health started to change. She was between 6 to 8 weeks old when a strange illness took over my body. One day I could not move one of my arms. The next day I couldn't move the other arm. And within days, it became excruciating or impossible to move from head to toe. I'll never forget the day of my first appointment. My husband pushed me in a rolling office chair down the hallway of our high-rise apartment. Every few steps, he had to return to push a double stroller holding our toddler and newborn. When we got to the car, I could not move my legs to get into the car. I could not raise my arms to pull myself in. Any part of my body that I wanted to move, my husband had to move it for me. I was diagnosed with advanced rheumatoid arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. Within months of the disease, I suffered permanent damage to a few joints. My husband's company graciously allowed him to start working from home because he's been my full-time caretaker ever since the length of our daughter's entire life. Rheumatoid arthritis is a progressive, systemic, and inflammatory disease in which your own immune system destroys the joints. It's known as synovitis or inflammation of the synovial fluid. Eventually, cartilage is destroyed and ultimately the bones are damaged and fused together. In some cases, it can affect other parts of the body, like the heart and lungs, and having positive anti-CCP antibodies indicates more advanced disease and a worse prognosis, which I have. I was told by rheumatologists that my diet had nothing to do with my disease and to begin the most aggressive treatment right away. And with the medication, there are side effects. I would need to have my organ function monitored because the medication can cause organ failure. If I ever left the country, I would need to let them know since the medication suppressed the immune system. I would be more susceptible to succumbing to infection and viruses. Other common side effects could include GI bleeding, distress, nausea, black stools, and an increased risk of developing cancer down the road. The best part was that the medications would never cure me and that I would be sick for the rest of my life. So being 24 years old, I was not in a hurry to get on these medications. I went home and ran into a friend who told me about juicing and that her husband had benefits with juicing for his multiple sclerosis. So my grandfather bought me a juicer and I did a 10-day juice fast. We found this film that I've watched dozens of times, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Joe Cross is able to get off his medications and reverse the symptoms of his autoimmune disease with a long-term juice fast. This experience opened my eyes to the possibility that alternative treatments may be out there for me. I continued researching and found this article by Dr. John McDougall called Diet, the Only Hope for Arthritis. This article presents various case studies and small trials going back as late as 1920s of patients with rheumatoid arthritis or lupus being treated with fasting and elimination diets. And I'll highlight a few examples, but you can find the entire article at drmcdougall.com. This article, or this example rather, says a fat-free diet produced complete remission in 6 patients with rheumatoid arthritis, but the improvement was lost when a high-fat meal was reintroduced. The study says corn and wheat caused a worsening of symptoms in 50% of patients. And here's an exciting one about fasting. Morning stiffness and swelling decreased in 14 out of 14 patients who fasted for 1 week with just water. And this patient had no morning stiffness or swollen joints after a 3-day fast, but a challenge of cow's milk blinded in a capsule brought all her pain, swelling, and stiffness back. What these cases have in common are that rheumatoid arthritis has a dietary link. And while not everyone with rheumatoid arthritis reacts to the same foods, almost everyone reacts to food. This is the experience of patients around the world. And when you have thousands of people experiencing the same thing, you no longer have an anecdote, you have a hypothesis. These are my hands. I have many photos like this from multiple times that I've done fasting. And this confirmed, like others, that my condition was also related to food. The problem was that when I started eating again, my symptoms returned. So the next thing I did was an elimination diet. I had to determine what foods I could eat that would give me the symptom relief of fasting. And anyone can customize an elimination diet. If you wanted to, you would just start by identifying your safe foods. And then when your condition is stable, you can test one new food at a time every 4 to 7 days. Food additives and seasonings should be tested. Keep a journal of ingredients and subsequent symptoms and go slowly and avoid triggers. Potential triggers may be retested in 6 months, but repeat offenders should be eliminated from the diet indefinitely. So I did this process, starting with a list of foods at the article Diet Only Hope for Arthritis. It consists of rice, some fruits, and vegetables. Eating these simple foods allowed me to recover up to 80%. I found the work of Dr. Walter Kempner and continued the rice diet. I lost the 90 pounds I had gained during pregnancy in just a few months and kept the weight off for 5 years. This was my 25th birthday when my dad made me a fruit platter instead of a birthday cake. I loved making fruit arrangements like this baby in a cradle and a bouquet of roses. I could no longer run, but at least I could walk. My mobility never returned to pre-diagnosis, but I felt like the happiest person in the world, like being given a death sentence and then being given life. I love this picture. So from my husband pushing me in a rolling office chair to the hospital to hiking up a mountain, all because I changed my diet, thanks to Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Walter Kepner. I wish I could say this was my happy ending, but my health relapsed. I've written this presentation a dozen times, trying to figure out how I can tell you why I relapsed without talking about the other aspects of my life. There's just no way to tell you this story without talking about my battle with PTSD. The context for my PTSD just stems from a hard childhood, beginning with my very first memory of being abused at the age of 4 by a non-family member. I have 2 loving parents who did their best, but we didn't have a lot of means, financially, that is, and so we moved every year. I went to a new school every year, and I didn't have friends, so I spent recess and lunch break in a bathroom stall until one year, another girl took me under her wing and made me her best friend. The problem is that she was involved with bad influences. So I started smoking and using drugs at 13 years old. I was kicked out of school and ultimately dropped out of school. And I became a runaway teenager. Because of my choices, my life was really hard, living on my own at a young age. Without someone to protect me, I became a victim of unspeakable crimes, and this left me with a lifetime battle of PTSD that my husband has witnessed our entire marriage. Obviously, my life now looks nothing like my youth, and I am in good relationship with my parents, and I've been clean for 16 years. So, why am I telling you this? Because in spite of doing all the right things with healthy eating, my PTSD began affecting my physical health. At 28 years old, I had a really bad year internally. My daytime paranoia was at an all-time high. I started having daydreams that I thought were real. I would start crying uncontrollably in the middle of the day, screaming for my child, believing that someone had broken into our home and was hurting our children. I refused to be comforted or talked into reality until my husband brought my children to me and I could see with my own eyes that they were okay. This impacted my physical health, causing my autoimmune conditions to progress. And when my friends were having babies and looking for their next car to buy, I was falling down the stairs and looking for one level housing. Then we went on a cabin trip with our church, and there's a waterfall at the bottom of a slope with lots of steps. And I just remember feeling really sad this day. Every person in our church, from toddlers to grandparents, they could make it down these steps to see the waterfall, everyone except for me. I started to look at my life as a cup half empty. Instead of saying how lucky I was to be there on the cabin trip where my kids could have fun, making memories with their friends, instead, I told myself, why even bother packing your special diet and feeling like the odd one out if your diet doesn't solve all your problems? So, with my focus shifted from gratitude to self pity, I began talking myself out of the diet. Then we faced our next stressor in life when we lost our property. We had finally bought a property with acres of land that we loved. We did all of our due diligence with home inspections, and I couldn't wait for my husband to build my dream garden. But within weeks of living there, paint started chipping all over the walls, revealing mold and substantial foundation issues. The total cost to repair was $123,396.03. We were told the property was unsafe to occupy. So, with no money to fix a house and no money to file a lawsuit, we had no choice but to move and faced foreclosure and bankruptcy. We moved 3 times that year and lived in a hotel for 1 month. And that's when I threw my hands up. I ate nothing but fast food the entire month, not because I couldn't eat healthy out of a hotel. Of course, it is possible to eat healthy out of a hotel. I knew every trick in the book to make this diet happen. I had successfully traveled before. I could debunk any excuse out there except for one, that is, when you lose your will. The saying where there's a will, there's a way is absolutely true, but you have to want it. Then I began having flare ups. I was in and out of the hospital, put on high dose IV steroids, including the week during Thanksgiving. I'm so thankful for our church family who, at the time, spoiled my family, bringing them a Thanksgiving meal and presents, and they've never stopped praying for me. So at this point, I made the decision to start medical treatment. Then, unfortunately, our life flipped upside down yet again. After the first injection, I developed a host of new symptoms. My head started shaking back and forth. I had extreme dizziness and headaches. Then, after the second injection, my head shaking became 10 times worse. My stomach expanded, making me look 9 months pregnant, and I had all day long nausea. I could not stand or walk without falling. I was in a wheelchair practically overnight. My tremors were so bad and so painful that everywhere I went, all eyes were on me. I saw a different specialist for every body part and underwent what felt like every test under the sun, from swallowing x rays, upper endoscopy, to full body scans. Next, I developed tachycardia. I had a resting heart rate of 130 beats per minute continuously. After blacking out a few times, I was diagnosed with POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia. There's a 1 minute video on my YouTube channel that shows what happens to my heart rate when I stand up. In this video, my heart rate starts out at 84 beats per minute. Excuse me. And within moments of standing, it jumps to 150 beats per minute. This is Dr. Blair Grubb. He's a cardiologist and world renowned POTS expert. I've watched every one of his lectures online that I could find. In this video, he explains what POTS is. POTS can range from mild to severe. He says when people are severely affected, they become totally bedridden. It destroys their lives. They are unable to maintain the normal regulatory functions that people take for granted. Every time they go to stand up, they become extremely lightheaded, dizzy, and fall. Frequently, they are plagued with digestive problems. They get gastroparesis because the autonomic system also regulates gastrointestinal function. They will feel either freezing cold or very, very hot when everyone else feels somewhat normal. The illness in its full blown state can destroy the life of a person. Now I was on 12 medications, including high blood pressure. Or I'm sorry, I did get high blood pressure, but I was on high dose steroids and beta blockers. With each medication came more problems, from migraines to stomach ulcers. I was instructed to follow a high salt diet with salt and water loading, though I developed edema and high blood pressure. My legs were in so much pain from the swelling. I was put on diuretics. I was drowning myself for remission, but remission never came. During this time, my arthritis became worse. I gained 140 pounds with no end in sight to my pain and problems. I felt almost hopeless. I've spent 3 to 4 years wheelchair bound, living with daily migraines, tremors, nausea, joint pain, fainting spells, the inability to walk, and most of the time I am unable to sit in a chair or hold up my head. I use a bedside commode and a power wheelchair. Simple tasks like showering were sometimes impossible until recently. Among my new diagnoses, in addition to rheumatoid arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis, were hypothyroidism, POTS, and Parkinson's. We no longer think that I have Parkinson's, but for anyone who may have Parkinson's, I just added this book in here. It's called Parkinson's and the B1 Therapy by Daphne Bryan. At this point, I felt like the woman in the Bible in Mark chapter 5. It says, she had suffered many things of many physicians and had spent all that she had. It was nothing better but worse. I wanted to return to the diet many times, but doctors have told me for a decade that food has nothing to do with my condition. I felt backed into a corner, pressured by others as if I were not helping myself if I didn't follow doctors' orders. And so finally, I took them up on it. And in spite of all the medications, my life was not better, it was worse.